As I have decided to delve further into Malazan Book of the Fallen, right now I'm in House of Chains. In the 4th entry, I find myself mentally going back and thinking about the 2nd entry, Deadhouse Gates. Now that I'm in the sub-book 2 of House of Chains, something that kind of really builds upon the foundation that we find in Deadhouse Gates, I'm forced to kind of put together some of those plot points and things that really, if I'm honest, I have forgotten a lot of those things. Getting through chapter 5 was a bit of a chore for me in Deadhouse Gates because, or in House of Chains, because I really just don't remember everything. Now, I've trying to remedy that, and I've gotten some help with that, so thank you if you've helped me with that. Lots of resources and things, and a lot of stuff that I have gone to with Deadhouse Gates are things that, it is coming back to me, and I found them to be interesting, but those are not the things that I still remember from my time with Deadhouse Gates. Those aren't the things that I remembered and stuck with me when I closed the page, and they are not the same things that stuck with me through Memories of Ice and through to this book that I am in now. Now, I need to remember those things because things build upon it, but what this video is going to be today are a few things that really have stuck with me. Some of the themes and some of the poignant moments and things that I really love. Now, they're a little bit dark, but I promise it is not meant to be dark for darkness' sake. I am not a grim, dark sort of reader. Now, that is very subjective because a lot of my books do tackle grim subjects, but I am a reader who loves to find hope in the things that I read about. I don't think that Steven Erikson is a dark writer, even though he tackles dark things. I think he's not even a fantasy writer. Now, don't get that the wrong way. I think he writes brilliant fantasy, but I think that is just what he uses to get through the things that he's really trying to express. He could write in a totally different genre. He could totally strip away the fantasy elements, and I would still be captivated by this story that he's putting together, and he can put together. The following moments that I think are special, and sometimes are specific moments, but some of them are just the themes. These are things that aren't necessarily found in the black text of the page. These are things that not all authors are able to properly do, but I think every author aspires to do this in some ways. These are things that are evoked and only really are a part of the messaging that comes across from behind closed eyelids. Does that make sense? Really, what a great author is trying to do is to express something that takes us almost all the way there, but then we kind of fill in the gaps in our mind and in our heart to find something that means something to us. And I think this thing that resonates from Deadhouse Gates is something that probably hits most of us in one way or another. For a lot of people, I read that Deadhouse Gates was the moment where they were really sold on the series. And that was the same for me. Even though I didn't understand all the details, there were certain things that kept with me from behind closed eyelids, if that makes sense. Now, there are going to be spoilers ahead. So I just want to warn you there. If you are not quite caught up and you were looking to reading the series, I think you should. But this will have spoilers for Deadhouse Gates. Now, the first thing, I love Diker. And I think, he isn't my very, very favorite from the series so far, but I love seeing the world through his eyes. I love that a lot of the things that we see are these harrowing experiences as we see the atrocities of war. There are scenes of people being crucified, and impaled on sliding beds. That's what they kind of call it, on these spears. And it is just etched in his mind. It's etched in my mind. And it haunts him about the brutalities of human suffering, especially in war. Through his eyes, we see the heavy weight of hopelessness, at least in the very beginning, and despair that hangs over the battlefield. He's not like one of these Wiccans, or even the Seventh Army, who look at Coltaine with teary eyes, but a man who isn't really easily moved to tears. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. He's kind of the pessimist. While everyone is hope, there are some people who are looking for hope. He is not that kind of voice for hope. And again, at least in the start, as the story does unfold, we are confronted with the tragic reality of betrayal, and Diker is forced to witness this and witness the brutal deaths of tens of thousands. I can't remember exactly the number, but I think it said tens of thousands of these Malazan soldiers and refugees as they are nailed to cedar trunks outside of Aran before he himself meets that end. It's just a poignant reminder to me of the human cost of war and the devastating impact it can have on those caught in the crossfire. They were almost there. And I'll talk more about this chain of dogs situation later. That's the last point here. But I just, that will stick with me. The things that Diker is witnessing, the tragedy, and knowing that he can't help people the way that he would like to. Now, the next one, and it's related, all of these are really related in some way. The horrors of war are often depicted in literature. It's all often these great victories and glory. But in Steven Erikson's books, these victories come with a cost. These are victories with tears in the eyes of the combatants. There is humanity behind all of this devastation. Now, I think of the river crossing, and I would have to go back to see exactly where this was in the book. I think about halfway. But this is where they're trying to cross this river. And of course, the nobility are being awful and whatnot, and they want to go first. And these mages rise these, they summon, or this is one of the things I can't really remember all the details, but they summon these dead soldiers to come distract the enemy, to help them, and to give them enough time so that the living can cross. And with them, they also raise these women and children who were also with them. So this was some group long ago. And we witnessed this heart-rending moment. Their last moments, especially with the women, who with the warriors had fallen and were bearing down on them. These people who were a rift from their own tribe, these were their kin. They stab their children so that they won't be taken before being brutally beaten themselves. And this is something that also comes through with all these books so far. These rendings of tribes and families. Even the Jagat, a powerful race, feared each other, right? As much as they feared their hunters. Sometimes this toll of war is not just physical but emotional, as people are ripped apart in some way, and families ripped apart. And I like that in House of Chains, I don't know where it goes, but it seems like it is foreshadowing that some of this rending may begin to be resolved. Now, a third thing that I think is interesting and has stayed with me, this friendship between Mappo and Ikariam is awesome and really thought-provoking. Now, I don't have a lot to say on that right at this moment, other than it kind of goes over the complexities of loyalty and trust, compassion and love. Mappo has this steadfast loyalty with Ikariam, and vice versa, despite the uncertainty surrounding his friend's past actions. And this demonstrates the depth of their bonds. Mappo has unwavering commitment despite not knowing perhaps some of the past of Ikariam. Perhaps that Ikariam destroyed his very village. And on the other side, I love that Ikariam, and this is something that really stuck with me, especially going into Memories of Ice. Ikariam. And again, here in House of Chains. But Ikariam is willing. You know, he just wants to know his past. He wants to recover time, or whatever the phrase is that he uses. But he's also willing to kind of stand for the things that he may have done once. These things that he cannot even remember. In many ways, he might not even be that person anymore, and yet he's willing to do that. And I think it's so interesting because everyone else, especially in Memories of Ice, they are stuck with these memories of their past traumas and things they've done, or things that even other people have done, these prejudices. But in some ways, Ikariam is a blank slate, and yet he's willing. I just think that's interesting. Now, another thing, before getting really to the big thing that I think I will remember for a long time, but despite the potential for this book being overwhelmingly bleak, as I had mentioned before, it could leave us just despondent. It gets pretty brutal. But it is surprisingly punctuated with moments of humor. All of these books are. These moments have served the characters and showcases them in a very human way as they hold on to shreds of humanity that are still with them. For instance, when Coltane chose to demote one of his comrades, when he was really meaning to honor the guy, everyone just laughs. They think it's kind of hilarious that this man who they just respect and revere so much is now seen in this sort of human way. And I think it is always just punctuated. This humor is punctuated at just the right moments. Moments where people could just be caught up in the moment. You know, they've had these great battles where they have had so much loss, but they've managed to pull through, and yet they're choosing to try to hold on to some of that humanity within them. I think that's awesome. And that's where I think Steven Erikson really, more than anything, is a human writer. I mean, all these people who write books are human writers, but that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. Now, the last thing has to do with Squint. And, you know, that moment with Coltane, and they were so close to getting to the safety of the walls. That's all they were trying to do. Get people to the safety of the walls. And now we have the anguish of Squint as he is forced to end the life of his hero. And we see his pain, and we see him kind of embodying the pain of everyone else that is witnessing that, unable to do anything. He marches up to the walls, willing to let fly all of his arrows in defense of the city and in defense of the people who are being tortured and injured out there. He wants to help them. But ultimately, everyone is just asking for one arrow. Isn't that amazing? Only one arrow was needed. Not to destroy the enemy commander, but to help someone to help their hero as an act of mercy. But man, does this have a toll on Squint, and I had to close the book. I didn't want to rush through this part. I wanted to really sit with Squint. And to me, he's just the character that stuck with me the most at the end of the book. I didn't even expect it. I wanted to sit with Squint. Because even though finally they don't get to hear the yells of their commander and witness this, I can't imagine that toll it has had on him. He has to carry that with him. And I love that we see him in House of Chains, and he's still carrying that. Man, he needs a major Eckovian hug. Even though I think he knows he did the right thing, he is the one that brought not only mercy, but the final killing blow. It's brutal. It's brutal. I can't imagine the cost it would have. Now, just in closing here, despite not really comprehending every detail of the book, again, now I have gone back to try to fix that, and things have come back a lot better than I perhaps gave myself credit. I was starting to worry that I was getting totally lost in the dust with this 5th chapter of House of Chains. I really didn't understand a lot of who people were. But I think I'm going to be okay. But despite all that, I think that, like I've said, Steven Erikson just is such a great writer on the human experience. And this is a global sort of world that resonates with everyone. Or can resonate with everyone. And as mentioned, he isn't really a dark writer for the sake of being dark, even though he really doesn't shy away from the harsh realities of this world, or the harsh realities of the world that he's writing about. I think he uses them, however, to make that little bit of light shine the brighter. He writes about hope. It is in the DNA of what he's writing about. Even if 99% of a book is dark, that 1% is what can cast out that dark for me in the end. And often does in some of these books that I tend to enjoy reading. It's not because I like dark things. It's because I like hope and I love the light. Those moments of humanity and humor amidst the despair is what makes this series so captivating and thought-provoking to me. It was so apparent that this was the right series for me when I especially got to Deadhouse Gates. Despite the grim details, there's optimism, isn't there? A great sense of optimism that shines through. Now, he might kick me in the crotch with a frozen boot. Now that I've said that, I mean, not him personally, but the series will. We'll see. But I see some great foreshadowing. I mean, it can't get any worse. Well, I'm sure it will be. Okay. I'm sure it's going to get way worse. But I see some great optimism and great light, and I really appreciate this series so far. So I want to thank him for that. Looking forward to also getting to these other books from Ian C. Esselmont. I think I said that right. Which I'm looking forward to getting to those as well. But there are some things, like I said, from Deadhouse Gates that will stay with me for a while. For a long while. I loved Memories of Ice. I loved the journey of Memories of Ice. But that ending of Deadhouse Gates, especially with Squint, just this one character, especially, is one that I will think about quite a while. Or for quite a while. And I'll see you on the next video.